Hans Niemann be out here taking chess Grandmaster souls. This is where he finished at the 6th of May late Title Tuesday tournament, ahead of Hikaru, ahead of Magnus. He absolutely ruins Alexander Bortnik in this game, one of the strongest blitz players in the world. It's truly incredible, and he's also flying high because he's just got his lie detector results in. I'll link that video at the end in case you missed it, but let's dive to some chess here, because Bortnik kicks off with d4 in this online contest. Hans goes knight f6, and check this out, knight to c3, d5, bishop f4. Bortnik dares to play the Jabava London against a man who did an entire course on it,
thus letting them play e6 without actually having proper knowledge of the French. And that's why this course is the greatest of all time.
And the greatest course in the world it was. Now, with the pressure coming on the c file, a6 takes control of a square, and now look at this. I've never seen the opening played this way. e3, and Hans just starts pushing the juicers. First going for this bunny ears thing, now a3, Bortnik be like, anything you can do weird, I can do weirder. Now b5, and it really is a stinky pawn structure that Hans is setting up. Before he can get too much space here, we see Bortnik push, and now pawn to c ships. Look at that. All of those pawns on the light squares. This guy is absolutely crying. Bortnik, however, has got his bishop outside the pawn chain. This is very much a bad bishop. The knight now hops in, pressuring the pawn, and you might think bishop d6 or queen c7, then prepare to develop the knight, but no, Hans pushes another a5. It's actually the top move. All of his pieces stuck on the Etienne back row. By the way, for those who don't get that reference, this is Etienne back row, former top 10 player about 20 years ago, French Grandmaster. Now, what's wrong with this? Well, nothing actually. It's a good move. Best way for white to go is with knight d3 to cover this pawn, or rook b1. You know, there is pressure here, but instead, Bortnik, so bamboozled by the pawns, takes on c6, completely forgetting pony worth 3, pawny worth 1. Hans says thank you for the free piece. Now we see a second pawn drop, and this is Bortnik's point. They say in the British Chess League, if you get 2 pawns and a check, it's worth it for the piece sacrifice. Give it away. Now you could take on b4. You get a wild line where you sack an exchange, but Hans pushes in the centre here to blunt the white bishop. We get pawn captures. Again, there was interesting lines with takes and so on, and now you can go g5. Try and take the bishop, give the knight, but Hans plays knight e4, not actually the best. Bortnik could play pawn f3. He misses it. The queen h4 check stuff doesn't work. You go g3 and the bishop supports. And when the knight moves, you know, knight g5 best move. There's this awesome tactic to remember. It's queen takes on d5. Captures, you go to Forktown, population Niemann, white stands better. Okay. Let's run it back because f3 wasn't found. Instead, we see pawn to e6 played, and it has a lot of logic to it. Now again, Bortnik is going for the fork, but Hans says, fine, thank you very much. I'll gobble up your pawn like a delicious plate of
mushrooms.
Yes, you can check. Now I'm going to sidestep. No worries, I never got out the forking way. I'm not even going to capture your knight back. It's trapped in. Instead, I'm going to go directly to the throat here, and Hans plays pawn to g5. Andrea starts spinning the beats. We love it. This guy's preparing to hit this chocolate slide. We get f3 going for the counter attack. It's really sharpening up, but it's not the best move, as you can see. You know, preferred was trying to extricate the knight immediately, but this is the game. Now we see knight c3 hitting the queen. It saves itself, and the bishop hits the promised land, covers that knight there, and creates all manner of deadly tactics. But how do you deal with them when you've got a bishop hanging and a knight? So the knight jumps back here. Now we see the bishop captured, knight takes, hits the queen, so pawn recaptures, and now b5 is this desperate attempt to keep lines closed. Let's run it back one move. What if you try and move this one or something? Then there's queen b6 coming onto the dark squares. You could even take immediately here, and the knight starts hopping. Maybe this isn't so bad as well. Still opens lines. At the end of the day, black has 2 minor pieces for a rook and is attacking the exposed king. So instead we see this one played, and now you could play many good moves here, but Hans goes for knight e5, hits the queen and sets a deadly tactic. If you capture, then this is of course the follow-up. You get fossilized and you even win a rook just for good measure. So let's run back here. We didn't see queen takes on c3, instead queen d2. Pawn captures gets the brilliancy because the same tactic exists, so you can't touch the knight. So the pawn was captured. d4 of course, ploughing through the center, and now queen f4 looks for some desperate activation. The rook picks up a tempo, however. Check. The bishop picks up a tempo for the sake of a worthless pawn. The white king's getting absolutely shredded. Takes was played, knight takes check, pawn takes back, and now is it a mouse slip? We have to ask. Because Niemann plays the collinear queen d4. That's when you don't quite execute the move expected. You stop a bit short, often sit on the head of a pawn, let's say. Very, very positional kind of move here. And now the threat is to actually check from e5 and deliver a checkmate. So this queen drops back, covering the key square and the pawn. But now there's a nice little tactic. All comes back to loose pieces drop off, and it's knight e4. However you capture, and you do have to capture, the queen's under fire and you can't get back and save the rook. There's 2 pieces on it. Well, then this is the follow-up tactic. It's queen takes on a1. The queen blocks so as not to lose a second rook here, but check. You could play queen d2, then again you could check, you could bring in the bishop, many different options, but Bortnik goes on the run. Now we get another check. King f1 is far and away the best move, but it's all miserable. Instead he goes for king g3, and watch this. Queen e3 is a lovely slow motion trapping move, threatens to check from g5. h4 stops that one, but now we get another check. Of course you could have brought the rook to the party. Where to step? You've only got 2 squares. This one selected naturally, but now queen f4 threatens mate. Queen e1 covers, and rook g8 was the final move of the game here, because you can't stop the checkmate. Say you go g4, well then you crash through a mate like this, and if instead you try something else, well, what to try? Say you push a pawn or something, eventually you hunt the king using discoveries. White just can't stay alive. There's a sample line. This is the final position. Great week for Hans Niemann, great tournament. And if you want to see another remarkable game between him and Hikaru, then have a look at the video on screen. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Cheers.